We'll be calling upon stage Ms. Abudu. She is a media mogul, philanthropist, and founder of EbonyLife Media. In fact, her session is going to be focusing on Africa's entrepreneurial landscape that has emerged as one of the most dynamic frontiers in global enterprise. May I please request Ms. Abudu to kindly come up on stage? The stage is all yours, ma'am.
Hello, hello, hello. Good afternoon, good evening, everyone. It's wonderful to be here. This is my very, very first time in India. The hospitality has been first class. I want to say a big thank you to the Times Group for inviting me. I think representation is really important. And one of the reasons why I'm actually here today is I looked at the agenda and the lineup of who was going to be speaking at this event. And I noticed that there weren't any black women, because I do my research. There were no black women on the list. There were no Nigerian women on the list. There were no African women on the list. And I said to myself, it was important for me to be here to speak on behalf of my sisters, because sometimes we're never seen. And it's really important for us to be in the room, because I know how hard we work. I often say that for a black woman to be recognized and to be celebrated, she literally has to work 3 times harder than her white counterparts. But what that also does is that it prepares us to go out there and to give everything 100%. We tend to, once we get into the room, we tend to excel at absolutely everything that we do. So my thanks again to the Times Group for inviting me. And the topic that I've been asked to speak about or requested to speak about is entrepreneurship, in a rising Africa. And those words are very dear to my heart, because rising Africa, we truly are rising. And in entrepreneurship, I literally believe that every African is actually an entrepreneur within themselves, And Africa is not short of either of those assets. We're rising, we are entrepreneurial, and we give everything that we do absolutely 100%. And Africa cannot be ignored anymore, So to all of you today, I want to suggest that if you don't already have an African partner in any business that it is that you're doing, I suggest and I strongly recommend that you find an African partner, because truly the continent can't be ignored anymore. We're no longer emerging. We really are at the forefront of everything, and some of those issues and some of those challenges that often we're presented with have become our superpowers. I have found that I, as Abudu, have created this enabling environment. I've created EbonyLife, the group of companies that we have created simply because of the challenges that exist within the media space, but it's become such a superpower to me. Now, some of the superpowers that we have on our continent includes the fact that we are 1.4 million people. We have the youngest workforce in the world. The median age of an African right now is 19. So if you're looking at your future workforce, and if you're looking at your future consumers, they are going to be in Africa. So again, I suggest to you that if you aren't already trading or doing business in Africa, it really is time for you to look at doing so. We're driven by the gaps that we see, and that's what fuels us as entrepreneurs across the continent. There's rapid tech hubs in Lagos, Nairobi, Cape Town, Kigali, and also in Nigeria, in Lagos. Now, again, we're not short of natural resources. When you look at 70% of the world's cobalt comes from Africa. Lithium, copper reserves, of course, oil and gas, especially in my dear country, Nigeria. Diamonds, emeralds, rubies, sapphires, 70% of the world's cocoa comes from Africa. Coffee and tea, also, a large share of that also comes from our continent. But what I am happy about exporting to the rest of the world, which we have consumed for the longest time, is media. Now, I set up my media company about 20 years ago, and this is a little bit of the case study around what I'm going to be talking about today. I'm talking about case studies. Harvard Business School did a case study on my company 2 years ago. We're the first African company that they've done a case study on. They did case study A, and they've done case study B. And coming up sometime this year is going to be case study C and case study D. And what gave me, the courage and the inspiration and the willingness to take part in that study was that it's important for our stories to travel. We have for the longest time consumed Western media. You know, we've left it to them to tell us who we are and that our stories come from their perspective. But what about us taking some responsibility and some ownership for our storytelling? Yes, Nigeria is one of the largest producers of film on the continent, very much, you know, close to the number of films that Bollywood are doing. There's Hollywood, there's Bollywood, and of course there's Nollywood. And for me, what I'm inspired about is that looking at those gaps in our society and saying, how do I begin to fill those gaps? So I was born in England, raised in England. You can almost say that I'm probably an unofficial ambassador, you know, for Africa and for Nigeria. And I decided when I was literally turning 40 that it was time for me to move out of my 9-to-5 job, which was working in an oil and gas company as head of human resources. And then I decided that I wanted to get into the world of media. And I set up, as an entrepreneur, the first Pan-African talk show. I've interviewed so many important people around the world. And one of the interviews that was very dear to my heart was when I interviewed Hillary Clinton. And one of the questions that I asked her has actually been instrumental in what I would say has contributed to my success today. I said, how do we change the stereotypical views that the world has of Africa? And she said, Mo, more and more people like you need to be speaking on behalf of the continent. And that made me realize that I needed to move beyond just doing a talk show for the continent. I had to move into a bigger space and create an ecosystem. And that ecosystem that I have created has identified all the key gaps that we have. And as an entrepreneur, many people have referred to me as a serial entrepreneur because what I have done is to look at those spaces. So the EbonyLife group of companies includes capacity building. We fully understand that our filmmakers need to be fully trained. So we have a creative academy in partnership with the Lagos state government, and it trains up-and-coming filmmakers in about 8 different topics, from script writing to acting to directing to producing to cinematography and so on and so forth. And then there's EbonyLife Media, where we produce films that showcase our continent, which is so important for people to see. We need to be in charge of the narrative. Times are gone where we've left the storytelling to the rest of the world to tell us who we are and to make stories about us. We need to make stories about us that we can share with the world. Another part of our ecosystem is EbonyLife Place. If you're ever in Lagos, Nigeria, you've got to come to EbonyLife Place. We have a lovely boutique hotel. We have amazing cinemas. We have restaurants and event spaces that are absolutely first class. People often come and say, wow, is this Nigeria? At times I beg to differ and I say, wow, what do you expect to see in Nigeria? You know, because the image of what often is seen is the worst of our continent. Now, the streets of America aren't all paved with gold. But what we tend to see is the best of America in a lot of the movies that are made about America. So we also have to take some responsibility for that narrative. A part of our ecosystem is also distribution. Now, I took it upon myself that it was important for me I've worked with Netflix for a number of years and will continue to have a partnership with Netflix. But I also know that there's a gap. There aren't that many streaming platforms that come from the continent. So I took the bold step about maybe nearly 24 months ago that I wanted to launch the EbonyLife On Plus streaming platform. And please, the app is available in the Google Store or the Apple Store. You may wish to download and have a look at how amazing the platform is. And what gives me great joy is that when I look at our data, literally 49% of those that have subscribed and have become members of our platform are in the diaspora. So that tells you that there is really a market for wanting to take on African content, for wanting to see our stories told, for wanting to see our music and our fashion and our traditions and everything that is represented on that platform. So that gives me great hope. Another part of what we're doing at EbonyLife is we're working with a group of DFIs on launching a film fund. Because we know that the only way to scale the film industry across the continent is to make films at scale. If you make a film that's this big, your return on investment is only this big. If you make a film that's this big, your return on investment can be that big. So this film fund, I'm hoping and praying, will launch before the end of this year. And that would really give us capacity and the ability to be able to make films that can even be showing in a local cinema right here in, New Delhi or Mumbai. I've had several conversations with part of the Times Group on us looking to see how we can even collaborate on an amazing story that I have that's actually about an Indian family and a Nigerian family, and I'll leave the rest to be told when you come out and you see that amazing film that I hope we do get to make. But today, it's just to share with you all that entrepreneurship is rising across the continent, even when everything isn't right. Entrepreneurs rise to the challenge, and they make it right for them to ensure that they can really, truly, and wonderfully be a part of that ecosystem, no matter what professions they find themselves in. I'm really proud to be a Nigerian. I'm proud to be an African. I'm proud to be a part of this. Africa really is rising, and that we are at the forefront of doing really, really great things. And thank you so much for listening to me today. Thank you.